Welcome, everybody. You are in the session, Digital Learning in Museums, New or Passing Trend. So if this is the room you want to be in, this is us. I'm Jennifer Sly, and I'm with the Minnesota Historical Society. And I actually have a confession to make, and I know this is not a great way to start a session, but I just have to say that this session is a really selfish endeavor of mine. And luckily I already told the panel this, but at the Minnesota Historical Society, we recently formed a digital learning and assessment team that I'm leading. And I was thinking I would just love if I could just think of the coolest people that I've ever met in digital learning and bring them together and sit down and talk to them. That would be a dream. And then I thought, I bet there's other people that I have not yet met that would also want to talk about digital learning in museums, and wouldn't it be cool if they could come and join us too? And then all of a sudden, it's happened today. So I want to thank you very much. You've already made my dream come true. I know this is not all about me, but it feels like it right now. So we really want to hear from you guys, and I really want to hear from you guys. I also really want to hear from them, and we really are hoping today will be a discussion, because we do want an answer at the end. Is it new or a passing trend? So let's try to figure this out together. What I'm going to have is everybody just introduce themselves real quickly. But before we start, just even the words digital learning. What do those words mean? I've been up late at night thinking about what those words mean. How many people in this room actually have the word digital in their title? How many people have the word learning in their title? Interesting. How many people work in the education department of their museum? How many work in IT? Exhibits? Yeah. Anybody else? Shout it out. Marketing. Sorry, marketing. Forgot marketing. How many people are from marketing? All right, we've got an excellent team put together, well-rounded, to make this all work today. One of my favorite conferences is the Games Learning and Society Conference, and they always have the fireside chat. So this is kind of my dream. Even though the weather is epically nice today in Minnesota, I'd like us to just think about, let's just sit back, have a good conversation, and relax here in the afternoon. So again, my name is Jennifer Sly, and I'm with the Minnesota Historical Society, and this whole digital learning thing came out of us thinking about field trips. We serve about 70,000 students a year, and we thought, how can we reinvent the field trip for the 21st century? And that was my first project at the museum. At the same time, we created an interactive video conferencing lab. So we're starting to influx technology into our programming for K-12. And in July 2015, my boss, actually Wendy Jones, she's over there, restructured the education department division, she's head of education, to include a new digital learning and assessment group just in July. So we're brand new. So I just wanted to show you just real quick where we sit in the education division. So we have programs which mostly fall into K-12 and the public programs and lifelong learning. Those are our big delivery groups. And then we've got supporting groups, digital learning and assessment, inclusion and community engagement, and guest services, which all support the programs for education. And our audience is all ages. And our team, luckily we have a team of great people. So Rebecca covers mobile and audience diversity. We have Jack, who focuses on distance learning, Erica, who does evaluation, Susie, who does game-based learning, and Shauna, who does digital publishing and web. So these are the people that we have together that work together, and we're still forming what we do. So I'm hoping today that at the end, if you have any advice for me and our team, I would love it. But these are some of the things that we're looking at. Now that we have so much technology that we have embedded into some of our programs, we were thinking that we would want to make sure that we provide enough support for both staff and some of the technology that we can implement it effectively. And right now we're looking at mobile, distance learning, and digital publishing. Evaluation was added into our group, and it's been super exciting to see how digital and evaluation work together for intense log data analyses, and using technology to create better products. And then we're also tasked with looking at new stuff. So how can we leverage all the existing platforms we've already invested in, like the interactive video conferencing and these mobile platforms? We use Eris, which is open source. Looking at games, 3D printing, some newer technology so that we can always be ready and provide our users with the best possible and most interesting products. But really for me, I really would love to rename our group. And my goal is to rename it, even though we just formed it. And I'd love your help in coming up with a new name. Like, I want something like Paradigm Shifting Lab, or I don't know, maybe you can help me. Because really, it's not about the technology. It's about what technology and the new paradigms of the products we can create, and the experiences we create. So the things that we're looking at are connected learning. People are learning everywhere, anywhere. Responsive learning. So how can we take the inputs you're already giving to give you a better experience in real time? And then productive learning. How can people create their own things? So that's a quick introduction. Good Eve.
Hello, I'm Eve Gaus. I'm at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, Illinois. I head up the digital learning team at that museum, which is a team of 3, myself, and then my 2 colleagues, Christine and Peter. I like to think of us as a small but mighty team. So before we get into digital learning, I want to talk to you guys about Bryophytes, which, betting we don't know a whole lot about Bryophytes, potentially. A confession, as a child, I had this compulsion to make sure all the rocks were clean, so I would like scrape the moss off the rocks. So I think my penance now as an adult is I now get to talk to you about Bryophytes. So Bryophytes, if you don't know, they are the 2nd largest plant group in the planet. They are pivotal to our understanding of evolution, of early land plant evolution, and they're present in 4 of the major ecosystems, as well as being hugely important in the carbon dioxide exchange, as well as having really important medicinal properties. So basically, Bryophytes are really fundamental and really, really critical to our life, but we don't really think about them, right? Like if I told you Bryophytes, they're mosses and things like that, right? But like, most people don't know what Bryophytes are. But they're quietly supporting everything that we do on this planet, right? They're giving us oxygen to breathe. They're contributing to these super important biodiversity of these ecosystems. So they're critical, but they're not flashy. And I'd say that's basically how we approach digital learning at the Field Museum. The digital part of it, that is it's there. It supports what we're doing, but it's not what we put our emphasis on, right? Like it helps us get to our end goal, which is really geeking out about the science and the cultural resources that we have at the Field Museum. So how did we get here? You could also think about Bryophytes as being the ultimate trendsetters because they saw the writing on the wall, they got their butts out of water and onto land multiple millions of years ago, and thus have survived all the major mass extinctions. We're trying to live up to the reputation of Bryophytes. We saw the writing on the wall of this intersection between technology and education. And so we formalized that in 2009 when we formed the digital learning team at the Field Museum. And this team was really dedicated to look at the intersection between education and technology. And in 2012, we actually established the Granger Digital Media Studio, which is our digital classroom at the Field Museum. It was established as a digital classroom. We're currently undergoing a reconceptualization of that space and turning it into much more of a teen hangout space. We're actually having a teen focus group kind of help us think that through. This picture is actually of a teen in one of our programs and his mother. They just were doing Eris games, actually, and the teen was telling his mother all about his game on birds. So where are we? Bryophytes, as I said, are in 4 of the major ecosystems. We, in the museum, are kind of spread out in 3 different places, I'd say. So we base all of our programs in the Granger Digital Studio, which you'll see up here with the 3 boys, again, in one of our game programs. But we also do a lot throughout the museum. So we do a lot with partnerships with our scientists, with our exhibitions department, trying to think about how do we become a bridge. So that's really how we think of ourselves as a bridge to people within the museum, bridge to teens in the community, and then also out into the city of Chicago. We're involved with a couple of different collaborations. Hive, if you guys have heard of that, it's a really big, okay, I'm seeing lots of nods. Okay, so I won't go into what Hive is. And then Chicago also has the Chicago City of Learning, which is an initiative to try to bridge out of school time learning with students that are in classrooms so that we're engaging them in thoughtful and productive activities when they're not in the schoolroom. Okay, so what do we do? Like I said, we're a small but mighty team. So these are all the programs that we do, and I've kind of tried to do it with, we have really, really low-key drop-in after-school programs. The one thing that I probably should have mentioned up front is that our main focus, our main audience is teens, and we qualify teens as 12 to 18-year-olds, and most of our programs are actually for high school teens, so 14 to 18-year-olds. Next, we serve middle school teens. We do a couple of programs for them. And then lastly, we sort of serve the museum itself. So like the NSF collaboration, for instance, we're working with one of our scientists to help create a game for NSF funding that he got. We also do a distance learning program called Virtual Visits from the Field. And then we have a variety of programs from super open drop-in type programs to really intensive internships and youth council experiences. So how do we do it? So Jen proposed this question to us and she said, is your work disruptive? And I told Jen when we were on the call, I was like, no, because I hate that term. And I really passionately hate the term disruptive. So no, I would not say my work is disruptive at all. But I would say that it's very evolutionary. So when we think about what we're doing at the Field Museum, we think about building a continuum for our learners. So whether our learners are the teens that we work with, whether it's the scientific community, the exhibition community, or whether it is the community of Chicago that we're working with, we're really trying to thoughtfully build these relationships and tier them up. So maybe they don't see the Field Museum as a place that they want to be, and maybe they don't see themselves in the museum. How do we start with engaging them at maybe a low level, and then slowly kind of bring them up, and we show them that their presence in our program is so integral to the existence of the museum and what the museum is. So we do it through partnerships, we do it through adaptation of technology. So just as I said, like, technology is not like the thing that makes us what we are always constantly thinking about what technological tool do we want to use and how do we kind of like constantly innovate on that. And then also, like I said, relationships are hugely, hugely important for us. And then what are we going to do next? Well, I see our ultimate goal as really trying to change the face of science education. I mean, you just have to read the news and recognize, like, the state of science education in the United States is dismal. I mean, it's really, really horrifying how much our students don't know, don't care, aren't exposed. And I think as coming from a natural history museum, the connections that we have with the community, the scientific resources that we have, and our incredibly passionate education staff, I think really puts us in the position to be the leader to reconceiving how we think and talk about science education. So that's me.
Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Heather Schneider, and I am the Assistant Director of Learning Programs at Shed Aquarium in Chicago, so literally right down the road from the Field Museum. And I've been with Shed for over 13 years, always in education or learning. But about 3 years ago, our education group kind of had a big shift and transition in how we approach learning with our learners. And we went away from having specialized teams within our department who focus on a specific audience, so like you're the team programs folks, you're the school programs folks, to the outcomes that we were hoping to achieve with a variety of audiences. So our departments 3 years ago kind of formed were learning programs, guest engagement, learning planning, and evaluation. In each of those departments, we focus and have a suite of programming around a given outcome. So if we're trying to instill empathy and curiosity, question and investigating, develop solutions around aquatic topics and environment, that kind of puts the relevance back to the aquarium. Around that same time, we decided that there's a few pieces that we really do value and want to make sure that we have a lot of focus on those pieces, and that was things like mentoring, but also digital learning. Digital learning is a strategy that I don't think is new, but it was newer to have somebody actually focus and bring that back to the wider department, instead of those who, like me, love to play around with technology and see how it can unlock learning, but have how we can do that consistently across all our programming and do a better service to our learners, from a lot of who expect to have that in programming. So in fall of 2012, Digital Learning Team was formed. That comprised of myself at the time as the manager of digital learning, and Miranda Kerr, who's actually here today, as our coordinator of digital learning. And we are physically housed in Learning Programs Department, but we are a service team for all our learning group departments, as well as the rest of the aquarium. We work really closely with our IT department, our marketing, online communications, and that collaboration just strengthened immensely when we formed our digital learning team, because there is only 2 of us, and we are small and mighty, but it's not just what we crank out as a team, it's kind of what we do together as a larger team. And so when we formed, we had this awesome kind of clean slate to define on who we were. And it took a while, but we figured we can go in a lot of different directions and be a lot of different things with digital learning. And we realized how to define ourselves is by defining who we are not. And so we are not a dedicated team to solve computer issues or technology issues. We will help you because we just think in that way and are very helpful, and we'll try to figure out how to troubleshoot. But instead, we're a specialized team providing thoughtful and strategic approaches and directions to actually infusing digital technologies and tools within programming for our learners. We are not just about technology. It's not just about the tool, as many have said, and I'm sure you all agree. It's not like, oh, we're going to do this flashy, shiny new thing, and everybody's going to do it, and here's what's great about it, and let's go. It really is a thoughtful approach of what's going to maximize the learning, enhance the learning goals, and how does that make sense in what we're doing. And we're not a service team that takes in a request or an order and spits out a product. You want a movie? Great, we're going to do it together. We're a collaborative team that will work with our colleagues and with learners to accomplish the common goal, but we are not going to do it by ourselves in a corner and then spit it out to you. And sometimes that means that we might recommend that you don't use technology at all, because a technology tool is not always the best thing to do within programming. So this is kind of what we developed about 3 years ago, and even looking at it still today, it still stands. And I think it really helped our other departments realize how they can utilize us, and kind of what they don't need to come to us for, which kind of helped us to kind of figure out how we want to strategize. And we do have a strategy for our digital learning team, but it's infused in the strategy for learning, which is infused in the strategy for our whole institution. But as far as a strategy for us, we need a kind of a plan of the direction that we're kind of moving along. And as far as our audience, at the aquarium, we serve a lot of different types of learners, but specifically what we focus on is our staff. So directly, our audience is our staff, our colleagues, those around the building, and even outside the building at SHED. Indirectly, we impact the learners within our programming, but really our focus is to make sure that our staff feel comfortable, sometimes being uncomfortable with tools, but also being those thought partners with them. That doesn't mean we don't manage programs or projects and things like that. Actually, when we first started off, one of the first things we did was pilot using digital badges. That was kind of the big thing, kind of a trend that was out there, and we saw a lot of potential with our professional development opportunities for our teachers using digital badges. So we created a digital badge program, piloted it for a year, and kind of normalized it into our day-to-day, and it's currently now managed by another team within our learning programs department, and our learning specialists implement it. But at least we were able to kind of work some things out with the new technology, which we did kind of do on our own a little bit, but we've actually recently done another badging program, and it was highly collaborative with everybody around the department, did it together moving forward based on best practices and learnings that we had before. We also oversee our Learning with Shed Twitter handle, which kicked off last year. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary, which is super exciting for us. It's really a space where we can share out learner voices, our staff voices, experiences. We're getting more on how that can be more interactive and more programmatic. So we kind of oversee it, but even then, one of the things that our team really works on is that staff empowerment piece. And managing a Twitter handle, as many of you may know, or just in your own personal Twitter handles, if not for your institution, is a big job and could be just your full-time job of just doing it. So it's really hard to sustain it with a team of 2 who does other stuff as well. So we actually have trainings where our staff should be empowered to tweet from that handle as well, and be comfortable with kind of sharing that learner voice in the moment with the learners. Also, one thing that we do is, like mentioned, is very collaborative with others around the building. And one piece that we actually just launched this school year is we were involved in a project where we reimagined school field trips and the learning programs that we offer to try to maximize their experience. But also, our traditional school programs happened in a classroom, away from the exhibits, and then they went back up to the exhibits. So this picture here on the bottom right is a picture of our students using iPads within the exhibit to engage and connect with the animals directly in the exhibit instead of going into our classroom. It's called Science Tech Tracks. Be happy to share more if you're interested in knowing what that is afterwards. But it was a highly collaborative project, and I feel like every single department actually in the aquarium, no lie, every department was involved. And it was a great project. It took a while, and I think it helped us really kind of put like where digital learning is and how we can kind of infuse it across multiple departments and in collaborations. So how do we do this kind of staff empowerment model? It takes many different forms. It could just be thought partners and collaborations and just kind of discussing out kind of what you're looking for, what are you trying to achieve, and based on a lot of the research that we've done or time that we have dedicated to piloting and testing, seeing what the best thing is. It also could be staff trainings or workshops where after we kind of found a tool or a strategy, kind of sharing out how that can relate back to what we do. And a lot of it is very open of like, this is a tool, here's how we think it can work, let's just play around with it and see. And our staff are involved in that right away, which is really helpful for when they choose to put it into a program because it's their choice. It's not us saying, here's what you need to do and how to do it. We also produce toolkits for our staff. So after we go through some of these pieces, documents and guidelines and helpful tips and successes, challenges, case studies that we've done at the aquarium that they can feel empowered to do it on their own, where they don't have to wait, oh, I got to get a meeting with Heather or Miranda, I got to do this, they're going to have to help me do this. They can just do it on their own. And one of them that we are kicking off with, we just kind of wrapped up a digital badging one, is the SAMR process. And I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the SAMR process, which is about how you can integrate technology into programming in different ways. So it can be a substitution, it can augment kind of an activity or an experience, it can modify or redefine. And we had tested some things out and it worked really well. And we came up with some really great toolkits that our staff were involved in creating with us. So again, that they can feel empowered on how to integrate and know when to integrate and what kind of outcomes they might be achieving by using a specific tool. And we are part of the process. Whenever we develop a program, our piece is in the outline that they're doing and kind of an onboarding process or anything when they kick off a project. Digital learning is always top of mind and built in. So it's not an afterthought. It's not, oh, now I got to go talk to them. It's just part of what we do. at the Aquarium. And Jen had asked us once, like, what do we see ourselves in 5 years, and will we be obsolete? Is it a passing trend? And we'll talk more about that very soon. And I hope we're not obsolete in 5 years. But I would be silly to say that we're going to be the same exact team that we are today 5 years from now. And I think our team will morph and change. But something that will always stay is that our work will be connected to our mission and there to service and unlock our learners' abilities and needs that they have when they come to the Aquarium. But I feel like technology is always going to be around. It's just going to be new and iterative and changing, and it'd be great to have a team that's always focused and being able to filter out or filter in some of the great changes as technology changes every minute, as we know, for that. So that is us in a very quick nutshell, digital learning at Snyder.
Good afternoon. Is this working? Yes. Great. Hi, I'm Barry Joseph. I'm known on Twitter as Mooshme with 3 M's. Yes, long story. Like Eve, I too believe in evolution, but sometimes you need something a little disruptive like an asteroid to move things forward a little bit, make some space for other things to move on. But we can talk about that in a bit. I'm the Associate Director for Digital Learning at the museum. I work in the Education Department. The section that I work with works with little kids up through college students. In recent years, I've primarily focused on middle and high school. And the programs we've been doing that we encompass around our digital learning programs are pretty much in 2 areas. Actually, first let's start with the museum. This is the museum as you've never seen it. This was the original plan in 1872. Not only did it have a big tower in the middle, but it was a full circle. So you can just walk around it forever. We only built half of it. This is a photo now. This is a happy family. It says, we completed the ground tour of the museum. And they were jumping in honor. I get these photos every day. I don't know if you guys do this. Anytime someone posts a photograph from the museum, I have a thing that captures it. I get an email each day showing me what people were doing. So these people had a fun time that day. That was sometime last year. So in a museum like ours, at a natural history museum, we have all sorts of collections, from gems and minerals to our cultural halls to our fossils and bones. Working in a museum, it's all about reifying the physical and the object and the collection is a wonderful challenge for us, thinking about using digital, ephemeral, non-physical tools. And how we approach that has led us look at 2 things. One, looking at the digital tools that scientists use today, increasingly. Most people who come to the museum have no idea that, yes, there are curators who are involved in the hall, but scientists as well. And we have actually over 200 full-time scientists working in the floors they can't get to, advancing knowledge, which then often comes back into the exhibits. And these scientists increasingly need digital tools, which I'll highlight a few in a moment, to do their work. So getting those tools into the hands of young people is part of what we do. And at the same time, looking at the tools that are increasingly becoming ubiquitous and emerging in their lives, whether it's something they can access at home or something that they need to come to the museum to see. So just a few highlights. So down here we have some 3D printed Homo naledi fossils that were recently discovered, as many of you I'm sure have seen, in South Africa, and were then shared within the museum in an open lab space so people can actually see what they look like and pick them up with their own hands. Here in our laboratory here, you can do DNA extraction. You can actually look at models of all sorts of fossils, from Neanderthals to different other forms of extinct Homo historical folks, using the digital tools. But at the same time we have, let's see, where should I jump to? In the middle here, this is a coin, which many of you have seen me passing around. It's a coin that everyone in the museum is going to get who wants one starting next month. That is their portal into this new game experience that uses augmented reality to let the visitors go into the exhibits and experience it from the microscopic level. Up here we have a recent experiment we did with Telepresence Robotics. So mobile phones you have at home, Telepresence Robotics, not so much. And we're using it here in one of our cultural halls to bring members from the community today into the hall that was built over 100 years ago, to walk up to visitors and say, hi, yes, I know you think everyone in this hall was dead, or maybe they came from the time of the dinosaurs. Well, we're alive, and I'm one of them, and I want to show you things from my community that are right next to you that you're about to walk past. Can I tell you the stories? And so the robot is there to get their attention. And then once they get their attention, we found visitors forget that the robot's there, and they're making this one-on-one connection with somebody who's somewhere else in the world, finding out where this community lives, what their contemporary practices look like, and their lifestyles, and how these objects, these cultural treasures from their community, can be meaningful for them and as they move through the museum. And down here, in a similar but different project, this is some art made from a contemporary Haida artist from one of these communities. And you can see this part's empty. This is for the child to draw on when they visit it. It's a family engagement activity. But once the child draws on it and holds up their phone, the version of the object, in this case a canoe, will appear in front of them with their art marked on top of it. So it becomes a way to work with young people to have a participatory experience using augmented reality and this old technology called crayons and paper to let them co-collaborate with contemporary Haida members to have a new connection for them and create an opportunity for them to create a need to know about the objects that surround them in the museum. So these are just a few highlights. I showed you the picture from the late 19th century of what we envisioned the museum might look like one day. And as I mentioned, the idea was that it would be a circle. Well, I don't know if anybody saw in the New York Times today, because you might have been busy here, but this was just announced and these images were shown for the first time. In 2020, we're planning to open up a 300 million plus new facility that will finally close that loop. And I want to read to you a little bit about it. This is all just conceptual at the moment, but it was in the Times, so I think I can show it. The new center, opening in 2020, and I'm reading it because it still is, just came out, will invite visitors to experience the museum not only as a place of public exhibitions, but as an active scientific and educational institution. It will include new exhibition and learning spaces. It says education, education, education. That's the part I look at. That excites me, right? We'll see if it stays. With state-of-the-art technology and access to the museum's world-class collections, as well as laboratories for advanced research. It will also expand access to a broader range of the museum's resources for students, teachers, and families, offering new learning experiences and inviting all visitors to share in the excitement of discovery. So what role will digital learning have in the design of these new experiences? And how much will the type of programs I just described on the previous slide inform that process? Well, that's something that we get to watch over the next few years and find out. But with that as context for some of my work that I'm involved with at the Museum of Digital Learning, and from all four of us, we now get to transition and get to the conversation about what is digital learning.
That just made part of my dream come true. So can we give them a round of applause? Thank you guys for sharing your work. Yay. So now it's your turn to help us figure it out. If there are 3 brave people in the back, we have 3 seats up here. And what I would love for you to do right now is to turn to your table, introduce yourself, and then please, if you could just come up with an answer for us. What is digital learning anyway?
How much time are we giving them?
You guys get 7 minutes. Think that's a good amount of time? 5? Okay, introduce yourself a little faster. Don't mess around. And could the people all in the back work together and then people along the side work together? Unless we have some brave people coming to the front. 3 open seats up here. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. You guys do these 2. You guys do these 2. And then we bring this back out again. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Is this on? Okay. Did you guys figure it out?
Did you figure it out? Put up your hand if you figured it out. No hands? Okay.
Nobody figured out what digital learning is. What? Who would like to share some of the things from their table? What is digital learning? This one's not working the greatest.
Hello. Is this working?
Oh, maybe you're just louder than I am.
Was there something you were looking at?
Oh, yes. Excellent. Thank you.
Round of applause.
I just like microphones. Digital learning is about going where the people are and bringing the physical going beyond the physical limitations of your space.
Woohoo!
By this gentleman over here.
Nice. Anybody else?
You're all going to be called. We have a hand back here.
Well, we talked about the ability to customize the experience. It's possible through digital application, especially dealing with the different ages of the people who are coming through the museums. When an exhibit is created, sometimes it suffers from being one size fits all, whereas you can create those nuances that can appeal to the different ages and the different groups or places that people are coming from.
Excellent. Thank you. One more.
Personalization.
I guess I'm on the spot after all. We didn't come up with a nicely worded definition like some of the other. Is this on, by the way?
Yes.
All right. But we came up with a few terms, such as that it's informal learning, as a lot of museum education is. It can involve distance learning. It's involving. It can include different formats of learning for different learners. That there is a. We all like the idea of the continuum that we heard earlier, and I apologize if I forgot who. The SAMR,
The SAMR model, yeah.
which was really good and struck us as like, okay, it can be a continuum, it can be on a range. That it would, of course, incorporate technology. We talked about having social and participatory aspects to it, and also just the sense of flexibility that it enables. You can do a lot more with it than with a traditional, we know everything, you're the visitors, you know very little approach.
Okay, you guys did figure it out. Is there anything that the panelists would like to add to this? They did remind me that I can't keep you here all day because I was like, this is working so great. Let's just keep talking. And they're like, we actually do have to end at 3:30. So do you guys have anything else you want to add?
I think the one thing, can you hear me? Thank you. Okay. The one thing I think I would say about this is that kind of pervaded our conversations prior to the session is that we always put content first, and I think that's something that is a continual struggle when people hear about us being digital learners. We think that all we care about are the tools, but content is always king, I think, with digital learning.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. The content and the goals and outcomes you're trying to achieve, and like I said before, like digital might not be the tool that is the best, and a lot of times it can unlock and enhance different learning strategies. But technology is a tool and it is a strategy, and it's not like the thing that isn't. So like the informal piece and having it being flexible with learning and adaptable to different things, I definitely agree with that as far as with digital learning.
And for me, I can't approach a question like this without thinking immediately about the just over 10-year investment from the MacArthur Foundation and what they initially called the Digital Media and Learning Initiative, and now Connected Learning, and now they're going to be pushing it out outside the foundation. And what that was a 10-year initiative to actually do research with academics and find out what was actually going on. What are youth actually doing with digital media? What is learning actually looking like? Where is it happening? When is it happening? What is needed to support it? And then taking the results of those findings and actually implementing them into policies, into places, into programs, and into technology. And so that general approach to thinking about digital media is about not just doing things because we think it's fun or we hope it will work, but actually doing it based on having evidence. And when you do stuff, really evaluate it and understand what's working, what isn't working, with the goal being towards really having a broader definition of learning beyond just education. That is to say, learning is what happens in a classroom, and it can, but that isn't the only location. And sometimes youth can drive their own learning. Sometimes they can come to a museum and come into a structured environment where they have an expert or an educator that can bring them through a process, and understanding all these different ways that can empower each other in a broader network of youth's lives, which digital can connect. And if we, as learning educators and learning institutions and communities, aren't watching those pathways that youth are moving through, then we're not able to teach them how to become lifelong learners, because they don't know how to make those connections. They won't know how to build those networks and build the opportunities that exist. And they might still be learning things, but they won't be able to take it and use it in a strategic way to advance themselves towards whatever vision they have for their future.
Thank you. I wanted to give this to the panelists. One of the things we were talking about, we had a nice conversation to prepare for this panel, and one of them was to talk about why form a digital learning group. Like, what are the advantages of having a digital group within your museum, and what are the disadvantages of assigning specific people to do digital learning?
Okay, Barry's looking at me. So, I mean, any kind of learning takes a large amount of time. I mean, trying to figure out how to properly build and understand SketchUp and how you can teach that to a teen and then they can build and create their own 3D printed object takes a tremendous amount of time and a pretty specialized skill set, I would argue. So I think for that is just purely from a time perspective. If an institution really wants to invest in making technology a critical part of their educational mission, you have to dedicate manpower to it because you can't do it with existing staff, I would say. And the advantages are then you get a whole team that's kind of thinking about this world and playing in this world. I was just in the making the invisible visible section, and they talked a lot about intersectionality. I'm not quite saying that right, but I think that's kind of the thing is that's kind of the space that we play in, right? Is that we are looking at these very different environments. And, I mean, I don't think you could talk about two more distinctly different environments of like the education world and sort of like particularly the formal education world and the bureaucracy and sort of all the components that come with that and the sort of very firm ways of doing things within the technological world, right, which is very kind of innovative and things change very quickly and you're trying to meld those two worlds together. That's not an easy thing to do. So I think having people dedicated to that is good. The disadvantage of it is that no one owns digital, right? Like no one owns that idea or those tools or those ways of thinking. And so I think sometimes when you label something as you do this, then people think, well, then I don't have to do it because you do that. And so I think that's a real disadvantage to it.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, the not owning, like, nobody really owns the digital, and yes, we have it in our titles and our job description, but I actually see that being as an advantage of, like, nobody owns it. A single team owns digital learning. We all own it, and it's a strategy and tool, just like we have strategies and tools in our back pocket for everything that we do. But I think the advantage is that the time piece is that we can have time to sit and play around and bounce things on the wall, see what sticks, see what kind of outcomes we get, evaluate it, and then implement it full force with a team and bring our team along with us. We don't always get that time to do things. And in thinking about our learning specialist team, who are the ones who are out there facilitating the programs, they're getting ready for the programs, they're putting it on, then they're building new programs. It's the time to have that, that brainstorming and that playing around, and that is not always there. But we try to bring it in and give it to them as much as we can. But having somebody being able to, again, filter some of that through the system and kind of help that conversation and that playing around with it is very helpful. I'd say a disadvantage is that and I want to say a disadvantage, but challenging to not keep it within yourselves of like, yeah, this is a great thing. It's just how you're going to share it out and making sure that you share it out in multiple ways and keeping everybody in the loop, because you can quickly get attached to a tool, be excited about it, see how it can impact learning, and then kind of deliver it to people. And as we all know, that doesn't always work, just delivering, here you go, here's how you do it. It's really having that kind of co-learning and co-kind of development and co-kind of experience of how that can be integrated. So I see great advantage to it, but it's a challenge. It's hard to do. And in an institution with a variety of staff, not everybody's on board and thinks digital is like the thing. And of course we do, and we see great potential, and it's making sure that, whatever works best, we're selecting that. And again, it might not be digital for that.
I want to take a little risk here. I'm not sure where this is going to go, but we'll see. Before, Jen asked us to put up her hand if digital is in our title. So if you work in a museum and digital is in your title, please put up your hand. Okay. Now, put your hand down if the previous place that you worked at wasn't a museum. In other words, keep your hand up only if it was a museum. Most hands went down. Thank you. Not all, but most. I don't know what that means. But I think it's interesting. If the question is why form it, what that tells us is that for most of our institutions, we who are doing digital work came in from doing something else, that those skills were required from somewhere else. So it brought something in. So that's a broader question. Well, what was that? Why was it needed? Right? And what wasn't there before? Where I work at my museum, which is big and large and has lots of silos, I work in the education department, but I really work within the education in the Center for Lifelong Learning, and within that I work in youth initiatives. Let's just piece this down. The ability to take risks, and it's my job to take risks, to be disruptive, is what allows us to use digital tools in new ways. It allows us to do something new. So a position that exists, I'm not a group, but I'm a position that exists where it's my responsibility to make people uncomfortable, to try something new, to not take as the end point, well, we haven't done that before, as the reason to stop, but actually the reason to move forward, to see, is it possible? That required the creation of a position where that was the purpose, right? And that doesn't mean that the goal is to keep being disruptive all the time. That takes too much energy, and that's not useful. You want things that are disruptive when you find that they're effective to become institutionalized. But we're able to have a process where we can do high risk, low visibility things to test things out, and then we have a spectrum where at the end it's about integrating stuff that gets institutionalized into ongoing practices. And the ability to create something that was in our case, the museum, this idea of digital learning as a strategy that's led by a person in a position, has allowed us to take those kind of risks on an ongoing basis, even if those are not the ongoing normal practices of the institution overall. But the institution's able to say, this is the place that can happen, or one of the places where it can happen. And digital, for me, in part, is about not just leveraging some of the affordances you all share, like personalization was one in the back, for example, right? There's always affordances that digital allows, and sometimes you want personalization, sometimes you're looking for augmentation. There's all these different things. You don't need to use all of them. But often what they tell me in a learning context is that we're able to do something in a new way. We're able to rethink about what learning can look like and access learning in a way that we weren't able to get to before. So for me, it's important to think about digital learning as being something that is able to push through silos, it's able to push through boundaries, it's able to push through the way things are, to be able to look at new things. Now, and like I said, at the end of the day, you can't do that all the time. You have to be able to integrate it into practices, but if all you do at the beginning of the day is say, how can we use these new tools to do the same thing we were doing before, then we failed. But you need to find that balance between being able to be disruptive to figure out what that new thing is and then get it integrated into the standard practice.
Thanks, Barry. We have 10 minutes left. So what I was thinking, this is no pressure for the panel whatsoever.
Are you going to say dance party now?
Not quite yet. 2 minutes. You each get 1 minute. So actually that's 3 minutes. See how I figured that out? You each have 1 minute to tell the group, is this a new or passing trend, digital learning?
All right, I'll go first. I don't think it's a new or a passing trend. I think it's something that's been around for a while. Maybe the focus in museums is kind of a newer thing to have kind of a team dedicated to digital learning. Maybe it's new to be more collaborative with our fellow departments who have digital or have those skills or have like a stake in that. But I don't feel like it's new. And as far as a passing trend, technologies are going to change, yes. What we do today is going to be different what we do tomorrow and down the road, but I don't think technology is going away anytime soon. And we're always going to have to make sure that we're on top of the trends and how they can impact our learners, especially if our learners expect it and it offers a key to unlock great learning potential.
I hope it's a passing trend. And I hope that because I think that the digital part, I hope to see that fall off and this just simply becomes woven into how we do education. So yeah, hopefully in 5 years we will not be the digital learning team, we will be something completely different.
I came of age in the early 80s, but no one called my generation, I think, the Atari generation. But my kid growing up is called the Minecraft generation. Digital has increased in its reach and impact in all of our lives and the way it affects everything we do. You can just look around all the digital devices in this room just to get a sense of that. We all know that. So when we're talking about this question of digital learning, it's our responsibility to figure out how are people learning in their lives when they walk into our institution or when they're trying to connect to us without even coming. And that's not going to go away unless we think digital in our lives are going to go away. So with that as a reality, and as we learn more and more about what it means for us as a society and how we want to be with each other, and how we want to use digital media to mediate our relationships with each other, our ways that we access learning, our connections with spaces and objects. We're going to continue to evolve in this space. So when I hear this question, I think, will we continue to have a special focus in civic and cultural institutions to focus on what digital learning means? Until we as a society has figured it out, that's the only way we as institutions are going to figure it out and be part of, not behind that curve, but ahead of that curve. We might get there someday, and then it might just bleed into everything else. But I think we have a long way to go before we as a society understand what it means to live in a digital age.
Thank you. Do people have any questions for the panel? Because if you don't, I actually have one more assignment for you to discuss.
Or hecklers? Any hecklers?
Okay, oops, I went too far. Okay, question. Okay. I would love for you to spend the last few minutes of this session, we have 6, listening to these guys. They are very inspirational to me, and already I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are doing that too? Like, we're all doing a little bit of something similar. And my dream is that, since I can Google Hangout with anybody now, anywhere, to really think bigger about us as a field rather than thinking about us working in museums. We're working in this as a field as a whole. And so I would love for you guys at each table to talk about what's next and what are ways that we could work together. You could either talk about the people at your table, or if you've heard us talk and you're like, dude, you guys totally need to work together. I would love that, because I really want to think about what's next and where we'll be in 5 years and how can we come up with some epic paradigm shifting projects. That's all you need to figure out for this question.
Jen, can we give one model of an example? before we
Yes,
jump
I would
into
love
it?
a model.
So Eve and I and our colleague Rick at the Cal Academy run into each other all the time at conferences like this. And so we started saying, you know what? We get together and we have lunch, we catch each other up. Let's do it regularly on the phone. And we did that for a few months. We said, you know what? Let's start inviting other people to join us. And we said, wait a second. We could do that, or why don't we figure out another medium? So we started a podcast as a way for us to get to keep talking to each other about all the stuff that we love to talk about these things that are emerging in our spaces, but also do it with others, invite other people into the podcast, and build an audience around that. It's called Object Oriented. It's objectoriented.info. I'm doing this in part to pitch it, but also as a model for ways we can work together. Nobody funds it. We didn't have to get our did we get our communications department to approve? We didn't get our communications department to approve it. It's just we took that initiative and as a way to build our own professional development and also help build the field of folks who are interested in talking about stuff like this. I saw a hand of someone in the back and they walked out the door. Where'd he go? Oh, it's a time check. All right, thank you. Great.
Great, 5 minutes. If you guys can work out a project too at your table, you guys get extra credits. You get 3 minutes. You have a website? Object-oriented.